No. Hi, Dennis.
Hello, hello.
Well, I'm really glad to see you. We haven't seen you in a long time, and I'm very happy that you're here again. First of all, I want to congratulate you. I heard on your stream that on Friday your channel turned 4 years old.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Well, congratulations on this anniversary. And I want to say that in 4 years, your subscriber count, I think it was 325,000 or maybe even more, Dennis.
Yes, 325.
So I want to ask you, how were you able to grow your channel to such a number in just 4 years? That number is crazy. If someone asks me why I think your channel is so big and 4 years isn't that long, well, I'd say it's probably because people have a certain level of trust in you. And if I ask you, I understand it's kind of awkward to talk about yourself. Why do you think your channel is growing like crazy?
No, it used to grow like crazy. Now it's growing slowly, just a couple thousand a month, because the political process has stalled and I have to react to current events. This doesn't allow me to grow my subscriber base as actively as before. There was a really strong surge in the first 2.5 years. It was about 100, even more than 100,000 subscribers a year.
Uh-huh. But I think that you have quite a tough character. I feel like you never bend to anyone. Honestly, I wasn't planning to compliment you, but that's how you are. Like, this is who I am. Take it or leave it. Are you really like that, or is it just my impression?
You see, I came to YouTube with a specific concrete goal. If I needed to sell, let's say, some courses through this, if this was my sales tool, of course, I wouldn't behave this way because it's silly to drive away clients. Even if a fool is paying you, let them pay you. Since I'm involved, roughly speaking, in organizing a political movement, a movement, not a party, I'm bringing people of common sense together around me, preaching and spreading the ideas of libertarianism. So, of course, I absolutely don't need to persuade a communist like, listen, you're wrong, libertarianism is better, I'm open. If you want, come and listen, maybe it will change your mind or at least give you something to think about. I have to tell you, there are a lot of people like that. Over these 4 years, I definitely remember getting hundreds of messages where people admitted it themselves. You know, I insulted you at first, I didn't understand you, I unsubscribed, subscribed, unsubscribed, subscribed. In the end, I still came back, thank you. And I don't take it as, oh, I'm so great, you praised me, I was right. You see, life itself brings you to that conclusion. The situation itself does. So, everyone who is interested in what I'm saying, who understands the context, who cares about Ukraine, just needs to understand here's the truth, here's the truth. I either accept it or I don't accept it and keep wearing rose colored glasses, making things up, inventing enemies for myself, and living by what the propaganda says. Or I accept this harsh truth and together we unite and try to change something. That's basically how things are.
But just now you said something interesting. You said, my goal and the reason I came to YouTube is that this is a movement, not a party. What's the difference, Dennis?
Well, a party is still a formal organization, it's a legal entity. A movement is something that you might be able to put on paper, but it's not necessary. It's something you can't really touch. A political party is a legal entity and so on. Of course, a political movement can grow into a political party. Yes,
It's possible.
I'm not announcing anything, just discussing it with you in legal terms.
Yes, absolutely. Listen, today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. And of course, it's clear. I don't know if you've seen the video from Israel. I lived in Israel, and at 10 a.m., when the siren starts, the whole country just stops. So Dennis, cars just stop. Even on the highway, people get out and stand and wait until the siren ends. And well, today is that kind of day. And on this day, I'll read to you, I don't know if you know, but Ukraine has introduced criminal liability for anti Semitism. President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a law that introduces direct criminal liability for any manifestations of anti Semitism. The document comes into force symbolically, exactly on the day when Israel observes Holocaust Remembrance Day. The Verkhovna Rada approved this back in 2022, but the head of state only signed it now, tell me. And then it goes on to list the sentences. Some get 5 years, some 3, some 2, some 10. Is it just a coincidence that this happened, or did Volodymyr Zelensky somehow decide to do this specifically today for some reason?
I don't know if Volodymyr Zelensky personally decided this, maybe it was one of his aides, but I understand that it does evoke positive feelings in you, just as it would in me if I were only watching the situation from the outside. Actually, I hate to disappoint you, but this won't change anything at all. Ukraine already had laws against anti-Semitism, and now they've passed a new law that sounds very nice. Not a single person will be punished, Alexander, I'm telling you right now. There are a few scoundrels who, including on YouTube, are spreading blatantly anti-Semitic content. In the political field, they mentioned me too. They lump everyone together using the harshest words. I made a video where I put their SS uniforms on the cover, so to speak. But I even contacted the Ukrainian police through Telegram, providing those fragments, making a public appeal, and asking it to be considered an official statement, and so on. Nothing happened. The religious community is Jewish, among others, and they're quick to advocate for giving them weapons to continue the war. But to punish a couple of such scoundrels, even though there are all the means to do so, I haven't seen any of that. Well, maybe religious people think differently, the leaders of religious Jewish communities. That's all.
Probably not, because when I talked to, I think it was the chief rabbi of Ukraine, Moshe Asman, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Well, he actually said that, so to speak, these laws may exist, but they don't really work in Ukraine. Yes?
Yes.
When I saw this information today, I thought either it's just a coincidence or maybe it's not. Well, of course, I can't help but start the conversation with you about Orban, about the elections. And here's the first question that came in for you. Ask Denis, is Orban's defeat a chance for Ukraine or just a cosmetic change in Hungary? I know it's a tough one.
This doesn't concern Ukraine at all. Ukraine's fate is determined by its president and people. Of course, we have a lot of eccentrics who, on the one hand, want to take part in every election. They wanted to choose Kamala instead of Trump, Magyar instead of Orban, someone else instead of Nawrocki in Poland. In short, we would have to vote all over the world so that we get help. I call it voting in another country so that we get money for a war we won't go to. Our country has no elections or independent political process, and that doesn't concern them. On the other hand, there are other eccentrics, but this is already a large part of my supporters. They also believe that Trump should come, punish Zelensky, and justice should prevail, and Ukraine should return to the path of democracy. Or, for example, that Magyar should show his teeth to Zelensky. Of course, that's all well and good, and many people think that what I'm about to say isn't really work, and so on. That's what I think. The Ukrainian people, they get what they deserve, and only the Ukrainian people actually decide everything. No matter what anyone says, that the elections are bought, that whoever counts the votes wins, and all these interpretations around it. If people decisively want an absolute majority, an end to the war, and elections, this will definitely happen in Ukraine.
I'll read you one more question. You mentioned something about finances. Ask Denis, if the Hungarian veto is lifted, will Ukraine receive the frozen 90 billion from the European Union?
My prediction is that they will receive it at the end of this year or at the beginning of the next one. Nothing will happen quickly, and Magyar responds rather dryly about this. You see, there are very strong anti-Ukrainian sentiments in Hungary, unfortunately. Zelensky projected his own nastiness onto the people, so now in Hungary, Ukrainians aren't really liked.
Thank you. Do they explain why Ukraine has this attitude?
I don't know. I haven't been to Hungary, especially in recent years. I don't know. But from what I can judge by the internet, it's, how can I put it? Zelensky tried to drag everyone into the war. Is that why the propaganda labeled Orban as bad? Because Orban interacts with Putin. But then Magyar comes and says, we will continue to buy oil from Putin. So now should I call Magyar pro-Russian? No, Magyar and before him Orban are pursuing Hungary's interests.
Thank you.
And if today it is specifically beneficial for him to interact with Putin because there will be cheap energy supplies and because there will be normal relations that won't provoke a war or drag them into a war, then that means it's the right thing to do. It's an absolutely pragmatic approach. Trump is called pro-Russian. He is pulling Russia away from China. He, how should I put it, interacts with Russia in some way, including financially, but this is in America's interest today. This hasn't made Russia stop being an enemy country for the US. In short, it's all complicated.
Thank you. You know, when I was looking through the questions, you got a lot after we made the announcement, but I only picked some. I couldn't take them all. Ask Denis if Magyar's victory means that Europe will now be less hesitant to help Ukraine. Thank you.
Well, as I already said, the whole issue is with this 90 billion loan, I think it will be given sooner or later. From all the information I've read, it will be at the end of this year or the beginning of the next. It won't happen this summer.
Thank you.
And it won't happen in the fall either.
You know, these questions are similar, but they're a little different. Is it true that after Orban's defeat, the war could drag on because of new European money for Kyiv? I don't really understand the question. If you understand, explain it to me.
No, I don't know either.
In one of your streams, I think it was one of the latest ones when I was listening, you said that Ukrainian society isn't very united. Just like the Ukrainian diaspora living in Canada or the United States. I can't know this the way you do. But let me give you an interesting example now. We have a colleague, a guy who works at our radio station. His name is Bohdan Tarekanovic. We recently went to a store here in Vancouver with him. And I was walking around putting different products in my basket. And I saw some packaged cookies there. And there was something written in Hebrew on them. Without thinking, Denis, I put it in the basket and we kept going. Bogdan asked me, "Is it tasty?" I said, "I don't know." He asked, "What did you buy?" I replied, "It was in Hebrew, so I bought it." He stopped and looked at me. I could see he was looking at me kind of puzzled. I asked, "What's wrong?" He said, "Nothing." We got in the car and then he told me, "You really surprised me." I asked, "Why?" He said, "So, if it's written in Hebrew, that's enough for you to buy it? You bought it even though you don't know what it is. It could be something awful." I said, "It doesn't matter to me. I did it without thinking, Denis, without thinking about eating it or giving it as a gift. If it's in Hebrew, I have to buy it." He began asking why Jews are like that and only support each other. I replied, "Why ask me so many questions?" He said, "Well, I haven't seen that in Ukraine." Tell me, if that's really the case, if yes, then why?
Well, it's a phenomenon. And for me, it's very unpleasant because until Ukraine found itself in this situation of a massive exodus, more than 10 million people have left, we couldn't really understand or fully feel it. And honestly, I didn't plan to emigrate. And in short, as fate would have it, we found all this out. The Ukrainian diaspora, this is recognized by everyone. Americans say it, Ukrainians themselves say it, and most importantly, Ukrainians themselves say it, is, how should I put it, the most unfriendly diaspora. Unfriendly in the sense that they're unfriendly to each other. The old immigrants treat you like that, especially in America, especially in America. They act as if you came and are about to take their piece of the pie for yourself, as if, there isn't enough for everyone. I heard it's the same in Britain. Aggression plus very strong political views. There's this social network called Threads. I recently registered just for some extra traffic, but it turned out to be a horrible discovery for me. So it's just girls sitting there. There are a lot of Ukrainian women in Madrid, in Warsaw, somewhere in France, just sitting and praising Zelensky, saying how wonderful he is. They cursed Orban for 3 days and were really happy about Magyar's victory. They participate in everything, but don't want to live in Ukraine, Zelensky's country. That's real hypocrisy. If you support this, then live in Ukraine and enjoy what Zelensky has built. When your man is seized by 5 thugs and sent to the front, and 2 weeks later you get a death notice, then we can discuss what others are experiencing. Today, my mom told me about a woman she knows. They have shops next to each other, as I understand it. Her son died. He was a year older than me. Today is his funeral, you understand? And she described the whole situation to me. I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I mean, people who go through this feel something a little different. And here you are, sitting in Warsaw, telling everyone how wonderful everything is. Later, we'll probably discuss this further with you. I'll call it Zelensky's posturing with this weaponry. They're also sitting there celebrating these inventions. Well, then go to the front and use those inventions yourself. And the attitude towards each other, going back purely to diaspora matters, is just disgusting. Global hatred, division. First, what language do you speak? So, should the Ukrainian diaspora speak only Ukrainian? Why? Ukraine has 2 languages, and Article 10 of its constitution officially recognizes Russian. Well, that's what the propaganda made them believe. It's terrible. I don't see this in any other diaspora or any other ethnicity.
By the way, speaking of language, yes, I told you about this. I've even encountered it myself, and not even towards Ukrainians, but I see how Vancouver, в Canada, society is also divided. Those people who say that you should only speak Ukrainian and so on, and others are completely together from the same country. Does this mean that when they lived there, they were just as different, or did they become so different because of the war or because they left?
Because of propaganda, Alexandra. Strictly because of propaganda. You see, these people don't think for themselves. They live and understand life and the politics of other Ukrainians the way propaganda has made them believe. Propaganda told them that if a Ukrainian speaks Russian, he's a scoundrel. That's some kind of little Russian. If a Ukrainian doesn't like Zelensky, it means he definitely loves Putin. If a Ukrainian says elections are needed, then he's some kind of traitor. It's all according to the Ministry of Truth. 1984. Life is death, war is peace, and so on.
Well, usually they write nasty things to you here, but today it's me. I guess it's my turn today. How I look, how terrible I am that I support the wrong people. Trump has a lot more opportunities to deal with Zelensky than the people who stayed in Ukraine. And those who left Ukraine, they don't care. They barely think at all. Well, I mean, I don't quite understand the connection with Trump, but who is really a patriot of Ukraine? Those who stayed or those who left?
That's not how patriotism is defined, because everyone left under their own circumstances at different times. And even if a person left solely because of the war, they don't have to devote their life to anyone. For example, to Zelensky, the war, Putin, or anyone else. It's an absolutely stupid, primitive judgment, and I don't think it's even worth discussing.
Denis, you are our guide. Where will you lead the blind, the lost, and the helpless? Denis, what should we do?
No, I'm not a messiah and there won't be any magic pill. And I already warned back in 2022 people, this is a marathon. People want things simple and fast, but the world is tough right now and nothing happens quickly. We've been fighting for a long time, each in our own way, and we'll have to keep going. It's a very complicated situation. And there are very powerful forces behind the war. And you say that Trump has a lot of influence over Zelensky. Yes, Trump does have a lot of influence over Zelensky, but there are certain forces behind Zelensky as well.
Continuation. And now you just said that there are certain forces behind Zelensky. Denis, if I may ask, first of all, who are these people?
These are the Democrats. This is Soros. These radical leftists. These are globalists. It's huge money, hundreds of billions of dollars with their own interests, with a vast global media network, with non-governmental organizations. It's just a machine that sweeps everything in its path. They choose presidents, they choose prime ministers, they start wars, they can end them, and basically Trump, Musk, and thanks to Durov, who openly joined in, are standing against all of this.
Tell me, please, from your point of view, to what extent do normal people, you understand, want this machine to be destroyed so it doesn't interfere with the lives of ordinary people? How likely is it that humanity can get rid of them, or is there no chance?
For now, there is no chance because the vast majority, most people have been convinced that this is just a conspiracy theory and the rest simply don't look into it. They don't understand that most politicians are just talking heads with real owners or speakers standing behind them. So they think that some member of parliament in Ukraine or even Zelensky is the one making all the decisions. They think that Zelensky is really clashing with Trump and that Trump can't do anything. But that's absolutely not the case.
By the way, speaking of which, just yesterday there was a conversation, I can't remember with which of our guests, about what happened in the Oval Office once when Zelensky and Trump were there. And today there are people who say that it was a performance on both sides. What's your point of view on this?
Wait, what was the performance about?
What happened in the Oval Office, that scandal, the one with Zelensky.
Would the Zelensky-Trump deal fix everything?
Yes.
That's absolute nonsense.
Absolute nonsense. Ask Denis if Orban's defeat can be considered a geopolitical blow to Moscow and a gift for Kyiv.
I just don't get why it would be a gift for Kyiv.
I don't know either, so go ahead and ask.
Orban visited Moscow, but now he's left. Nothing has changed in any fundamental way. This is a defeat of common sense. This is a defeat of common sense, and I haven't said a single bad word about Magyar personally, and I don't intend to, but it's clear that behind him are those very globalists. You saw it, or maybe you didn't. The younger Soros quickly posted celebrating democracy's return to Hungary. With Hillary Clinton and Obama involved, everything was immediately clear. In Ukraine, people were celebrating, but then Magyar spoke at a press conference and things weren't so rosy, so those who criticized Orban should explain what has actually changed for Ukraine today. You're all celebrating like this. What has changed today? They call Zelensky the leader of the free world, and this propaganda is funded in the West. But Orban held them. These were the 5th elections under Orban. The 5th, he lost the 5th one. Before that, he held democratic elections 4 times. He won, not a single complaint. Everything was fine. He lost and congratulated his opponent early, unlike in Kazakhstan. He did it just an hour and a half or two after counting began. He handed over power and is doing so now. Goodbye.
And now you said the elections ended with Magyar's victory. What has changed in Ukraine? That's your question. Why does Orban's departure make Brussels happy, but doesn't guarantee Ukraine either victory or EU membership?
Yes, forget about victory in this war. It's impossible. This isn't for you, but for the one always mentioning victory. Forget that word. As for Brussels, now Brussels will be able, as I see it, and basically it's clear, to pile on the same nasty things they do in other countries. I think in Hungary, for example, we should expect migrants. A wave of migrants. In Hungary, you have to expect that Brussels will decide how they should live. That's all. That's all.
Denis, can the new government in Hungary both help Ukraine with money and maintain a pragmatic relationship with Russia because it's not safe to quarrel with Russia?
Hungary won't give its own money to Ukraine. That wasn't even discussed. Hungary can either block the 90 billion euro loan or not block it. That's it. How can Hungary help? Is Hungary some kind of super economic machine, or is Hungary giving us a loan? I feel sorry that people have been conditioned to believe in these things, thinking that somewhere out there there's someone who will help with something. What will help? Maybe continuing the war after all. But why continue the war? Propaganda has been instilled in society that if we don't get a loan, Ukraine will fall and collapse. No, it won't fall, it won't collapse. And Zelensky will go, sign a peace agreement, call for elections, a new president will be elected, and the country will develop and live peacefully.
Continuation after Orban's defeat. Kyiv, is this from Ukraine? They're writing to you, is it really at least a little closer to Europe, or is that just our wish, or is it just our euphoria for now?
It's wild, can you believe it? It's even wild to listen to or read this. Why are you euphoric? Please elaborate. Second, what does it mean that Kyiv is closer to Europe? To the European Union? And why do we need to be closer to the European Union? We don't need to join the European Union, and they wouldn't accept us anyway. They won't accept us there, neither the European Union nor NATO. I don't get the excitement. This is total madness. What you're reading now, Alexandra, is purely the result of propaganda at work. They've pictured something for themselves. Just find Hungary on the map and see its population and appearance. Maybe people don't know. Maybe people think that Hungary is like France or Germany.
No, I'm sure they know it's a small country, but Denis, well, it's not like you didn't study geography at school, but this is just some kind of total absurdity. Why ask Denis, why is Ukraine repairing the Druzhba pipeline and continuing the transit of Russian oil during the war?
Because Ukraine has obligations, there are obligations, but in this context, we can discuss something else. How Zelensky, I'm sure, with Ursula von der Leyen's backing, meddled in Hungary's elections. He simply blocked the operation of the Druzhba oil pipeline under the pretense that it was bombed and impossible to repair. And he said, BBC published it, he said, people are being killed here, what oil can there be? But now he's saying the oil pipeline will be repaired and running by the end of April and everything is fine. Now that people aren't being killed, Russian transit to Hungary is possible. It's all a game, big money, and war is business. I want to tell everyone, especially those still up in the clouds, even those in the diaspora who don't understand, war today is pure business and nothing else.
By the way, why does Zelensky keep oil transit going if it's money for Russia? Thank you.
I'll repeat it. There are obligations. That's how the world and life work. That's how everything is set up. And how much gas did we transit? he annexed Crimea and Donbass, and we continued the gas transit. It's not like people, this didn't all happen just yesterday. Thank you.
Well, Denis just answered, and you're writing to me asking if this doesn't look like double standards, sanctions against Russia and at the same time importing oil. Well, Denis just talked about this in case you didn't hear. Thank you.
It's not just double standards, it's an absolutely cynical story, but I think we'll discuss this further.
Who depends more on friendship today, Denis, Russia or the EU countries?
Yes, Russia won't die without it, I think, but for the European Union, it's definitely a crisis due to the lack of cheap energy resources. I really don't like everything that's happening. I really don't like it because what has everything turned into? On paper, Ukraine has been made into anti-Russia, but only on paper. In reality, it's Russia 2.0. Europe talks about how bad Russia is, but hasn't actually gotten involved in the process and continues to pay Putin money.
Well, Ukraine...
Go fight at Europe's expense. I really don't like this approach. For me, Russia is also an enemy country. But let's either all decide something together with Putin or leave it alone and all live pragmatically together. You will buy cheap energy resources from him. We will also buy cheap gas from him, avoid the thorny issues, and take his interests into account within reason, without compromising our own internal interests and living peacefully while this Putin is in power. When he is gone, not that he will die, but he will definitely lose power before that, we might reconsider everything. If a reasonable leader takes power in Russia, we can reach an agreement, make peace, and leave imperial ambitions behind. No, это ваше нет.
What they're going to ask you about now, I don't really know much about this topic, so it's an internal matter for Ukraine. Is there a hidden conflict between Zelensky and Budanov, or is this just a normal internal discussion? And why does Budanov openly say that it's possible to argue with Zelensky? Is this a sign of tension or what?
No, from what I've heard, they really do have tension, and you can see the inconsistency in their statements. Budanov started making more and more statements that make sense. By the way, I also noted this separately. I've been saying since 2023, the things that Budanov is saying today. For that, I was called a Kremlin agent, but now the head of the president's office is seen as a hero just for stating the obvious in 2026. For example, the other day, he said that Ukrainian drones are like Lego sets, made entirely from Chinese components. And that's it, there's nothing Ukrainian in them. Yesterday, Zelensky released a video with missiles in the background, showing a local posing on one and saying, we built this, and today he went to Germany to sell everything. How should I say this as an arms dealer? Yes, Budanov's statements contradict this, and let's say we have some hopes for Budanov that he will stand up to Zelensky.
So could Budanov become a political rival to Zelensky after the war?
Yes, he could, but it's scary for me to imagine that an intelligence officer would run for president. Not just Budanov, but anyone.
Ask Denis if the government has lost the trust of its citizens when it comes to mobilization. Why are 1.5 million men ignoring military registration? Is it fear or protest? And is it possible to win the war when trust in the territorial recruitment centers is declining?
Once again, forget the phrase win the war. Winning the war is impossible. And it was impossible from the very beginning. It was possible to strike back at Putin, and Ukraine did that in April and May of 2022. Period. After that, all that's left is to gradually lose the war, which is what's happening now.
Now,
what was the second one? What was the other question?
Why are 1.5 million men ignoring military registration? Is it fear or protest?
Partly fear, partly protest. It's just that people have seen, first of all, trust in the government is completely lost. Not irreversibly, but completely lost. It's fear, distrust, protest, and everything else. Everyone realized that this is not a war of democracy against authoritarianism, but a war, as I already told you, of a small Soviet-style regime against a big one. The big Soviet-style regime attacked the small Soviet-style regime. Zelensky completely copies Putin's methods. Putin is his role model, his idol. And he acts simply using Putin's methods, in some cases even more harshly. And people saw all of this. People saw how much money is being made from the war, and it's absolutely clear that they don't want to die for this. Although in the first months, I personally saw how there were crazy lines at the military enlistment offices.
So you mean that people wanted to go?
It was a real existential war. Russia attacked Ukraine. The threat to statehood was 100%. Everything was clear. Everything was obvious. People went. And then everything became clear. We fought back, and the officials quickly started embezzling again. They increased their theft. Everyone noticed and understood.
Denis, could the tension around the recruitment centers lead to an internal crisis, or is there already one?
There already is. The crisis is already happening. It's a hybrid civil war. That's how I classify it. In Ukraine, we have civil clashes everywhere. I don't know if people are aware of it or not. Officials from the recruitment centers are killing people, and people have already started killing officials from the recruitment centers.
Every day.
Clashes. Pregnant women are sprayed with pepper spray. They are beaten. This incredible stuff was happening.
Denis, what do you think is more dangerous for Ukraine right now? A shortage of people or a loss of trust?
Доверие кого?
I understand that they're talking about a loss of trust, both in the country's leadership and in what's happening in the country in general. Because people are fleeing from Ukraine, as it says here, because they no longer believe that it's possible to change anything for the better.
Neither one nor the other is dangerous. That's not just my opinion, that's what experience has shown. Today, Zelensky has lost all public trust. The state has lost all public trust, and there aren't enough people at the front. What is the solution? We'll shut everyone up, pretend that trust hasn't been lost, that we're strong, that we're winning, and we'll force people to the front. So my assessment here doesn't matter at all. They have a way out of this situation.
I don't live in Ukraine, but my heart aches for it and even more for its people. The war needs to end urgently, and this slaughter must stop. We need to change our foreign policy. The war could have been avoided. Denis, how true is this from your point of view? Thank you.
The war could have been avoided, but now we can only discuss it. Of course, the war could have been avoided. For that, it was necessary. How can this be explained correctly? So that Ukraine would be represented by a person who truly represents Ukraine and not someone who serves the interests of certain clans and uses the country as a proxy. At the same time, all responsibility for the war lies with Putin. Putin is the aggressor, but that doesn't change the fact that things could have been handled differently and this could have been avoided. I'm absolutely 100% sure that the war didn't have to become full scale.
Denis, how would you comment on today's visit and the speeches by Zelensky and Merz about Ukrainians returning to fight and about Ukraine being a democratic country and soon joining the European Union?
That wasn't said there. What was said was that Zelensky doesn't agree with the EU light or NATO light options. He wants everything at once and fully. Regarding the men, yes, that was mentioned. By the way, in Germany, there were many men who were happy about Orban's defeat. Now they'll have a chance to participate in everything personally, so to speak. Well, there was a rumor that there would be deportation of men who are subject to military service. I don't believe in deportation, no matter what kind of lawlessness the leftists commit in Germany. The courts still work there, but what I'm sure will happen is that they simply won't extend the so-called temporary protection for Ukrainian men of conscription age. That is, in March 2027, they'll say, guys, go. You can't live here anymore.
You said that the war could have been avoided or shouldn't have happened.
And it both should and could have.
And who, Denis, could have influenced the situation back then to prevent it? Nevertheless, it all happened.
First of all, Biden. And then Zelensky.
But you just said, well, Donald Trump has said more than once, if I had been president at that time, there wouldn't have been a war. What does Trump mean by that? Why does he claim no war would have happened if he were president?
Well, because he knows how to talk to Putin. Putin is afraid of him. America's capabilities are incomparable to Russia's capabilities. In the most extreme case, Trump could have offered Putin something to prevent this war. Would have stopped it, would not have let it happen. That is some other deal. In the end, well, okay, I don't want to get into those weeds right now. What I've already said is enough.
And by the way,
Trump would have been president, or maybe you don't. Yesterday, Tulsi Gabbard, the head of American intelligence, domestic intelligence, she published not just her opinion, but documents about how this whole story was created in 2019 and 2016 regarding the US elections. There was simply a CIA officer who was politicized by the Democrats and presented wishful thinking as reality, which led to Trump's impeachment in 2019, and then the whole chain of events that followed. Then Trump lost the 2020 election in 2019, and even back in 2016 he said it. What do we conclude from this? That all of this, everything on this scale, was planned and happened exactly as certain people needed in order to make money, establish control, and so on. Just like Putin took and annexed Crimea and Donbass, and for some reason Obama and Biden were saying not to shoot, like, guys, don't provoke. Well, they didn't provoke.
You just said something interesting, Denis. I think this is the first time. Only Balashov, I think, once talked to me about this topic. You said that because when I asked you if what Trump claims is true, if he had been president, there wouldn't have been this war. And you said it's because Trump knows how to talk to Putin. And then you added, because Putin is a little afraid of him, because you can't compare the military power of the United States and Russia. You've heard the rhetoric many times that Russia says we're the coolest, the strongest, we'll put everyone in their place, Trump is an idiot, and so on and so on. So when you just said that he knows how to talk to Putin, what does that mean, Denis? And why do you think that he really does know how to talk to Putin and that Putin is a little afraid of him? Why do you think so?
Well, first of all, Trump took concrete actions. The resolution on Crimea, providing weapons to Ukraine at that time, in particular RPGs, which Ukraine used to fight back at the beginning of the war. So that was in practice. Second, in what situation did Russia ever do anything to the US? Never. The US dominated everywhere. The two economies are on completely different scales. Russia is definitely more reckless, of course. How should I put it? There's this urge to cross the red line. No one denies they have more, simply because of their nuclear weapons. They've always acted that way. But when we talk about something serious, Maduro was kidnapped and Russia did nothing. Trump attacked Iran together with Israel, and Russia did nothing. So could it? Well, they could have tried to do something, but no one will go into an open conflict. Even China doesn't go into an open conflict. Everyone is being rational. Only Zelensky might have entered into open conflict instead of avoiding this situation.
You just said that everyone is thinking straight and no one gets into an open conflict with the American president. Volodymyr Zelensky chose a different path. What do you think made him behave differently? Today, it's clear that this wasn't the smartest move for Ukraine, for Ukrainian society, but still, for some reason, he chose this path, Denis.
Yes, I've thought about it a lot, and I have one answer: complexes, personal complexes. This is probably something that goes way back. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I'll say that right away. But it's probably something that goes back to his youth. Then, after all, he used to dance for them in the sauna, perform at corporate parties, and now he can talk to them as an equal. And this desire to get even, to show that I'm a cool guy, not worse than you, to compare, so to speak, manhoods, that's what flared up in him. All of this, of course, was determined by the intelligence services, organizations, those who benefited from it. They figured out his psychological profile and realized this guy can be pumped up to the fullest. You can promise him a lot, and he'll do it. But it didn't happen right away. I don't want to say that Zelensky arranged everything like that from the very beginning. They looked and thought, oh, let's drag Zelensky into the war. No, it wasn't like that. Everything happened gradually. Rather, they really did what I just mentioned after the war started. When Ukraine held out, they saw, that's it. Now we can do anything thanks to Zelensky. And when I said I want to take a step back, it's important that all of them are sane and don't want war. Not a single president or country leader, whether I like them or not, whether I think they're a fool or smart, wants war on their own territory. If you have the military power and the situation requires it, then how did the USA do it? They bomb Iran, but Iran can't bomb the USA and can't do anything on US territory. Everyone avoids it. China can and has the power to respond to the USA at sea or in other ways, but they don't do it. They will carry out sabotage. The intelligence services and intelligence networks will be active. They will act through their proxies, including using Russia in Ukraine. But China itself won't do it. Continuation, not even because they're afraid in the literal sense of the word. It's just not smart. Editor, that's all. What Zelensky did was not smart. When the CIA comes to you and says, you'll have a war in 6 months, you sit there, laugh like a madman and say, you over there far across the ocean don't understand anything. This video is everywhere. I didn't make this up. You can take my word for it. Your intelligence service is impressive, but we know better here. When war reaches your land, excuse me, you should go to prison for that. Это ты просто... When you say that we know everything better here, and then in Mariupol a cemetery was made out of living people, and according to various estimates, 80 to 100,000 civilians are buried in the ground, then what is that? I'm not even mentioning what the military say or those who were close to intelligence, that there was sabotage, that territories were somehow surrendered. Currently, there's a war over land that was surrendered by traitors at the start, not land you recaptured by military force. This was given up by traitors. Nothing, not a single interrogation. They just picked some people to blame. Some former SBU officers, they're being tried endlessly. And that's it. But where is the head of the security service at that time, Bakanov, who was the head of the SBU? Where is all of that? You see, Alexandra, someday all of this will come to light. Not everything completely 100%, but as I already said, a significant part, 20 to 30%. People will be shocked and amazed. I told them this. Does Mendichgate seem unbelievable to you? Just wait. During the campaign, things will come out that will make Mendichgate seem minor. You'll see. That's what will happen.
Denis, you often support and speak positively about Israel in your streams. How can you do that when those who robbed Ukraine, like Mendish, whom Israel doesn't consider it necessary to extradite, even though he's a person who robbed the country and fled? At the same time, considering yourself a patriot of Ukraine, you support a country that, so to speak, shelters the enemies of Ukraine?
So again, this is a person who has been brainwashed by propaganda, and he thinks that Israel should act in Ukraine's favor. Hungary should act in Ukraine's favor, America in Ukraine's favor. The whole world doesn't revolve around Ukraine. Israel does not extradite its citizens. There were a few serious precedents and exceptions. Why should Israel extradite its citizens? Considering all the historical aspects, they made that decision for themselves. But someone thinks that Israel should, oh, what a bad Mendish. He stole in Ukraine, let's extradite him. It's even funny for an adult to reason like that. And where was Ukraine which let Mendish go? Doesn't anyone want to ask? How did he cross the border? How did he get warned a couple of hours before the searches? Does no one want to ask? And now Dermak is in the city of Kyiv, laying claim to some bar associations. Doesn't anyone want to ask? But Israel must. You see, that's the whole problem in Ukraine. Everyone owes us everything, but locally we don't want to do anything ourselves.
Listen, you have a lot of questions, but we have a phone call. If you don't mind, we'll take it, okay?
Go ahead, of course.
Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Boris Reitman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
I have a question for your guest. Maybe he knows. Why is Zelensky held to that standard? Why are there such requirements? Any president of any country today, if a war starts, there will be a draft in that country and military personnel won't be allowed to leave the country. It's the same in Israel and every country. And if we remember the sentiments that were in Ukraine when the war started, and even before the war, there were clear nationalist sentiments, there was support for using only Ukrainian. And Zelensky is simply reflecting the wishes of his people, that is, the people of Ukraine. He hasn't done anything that the population didn't want. Another question is whether he should oppose the population and say, this is wrong. But he didn't do that, but no president of any country does that. Why are you, Zelensky's critics, so negative specifically towards Zelensky? Is it because he's Jewish? It's because you have to expect that when all this is over, the Jews will be blamed. Thank you.
Denis.
So now the person who wants to accuse me of anti-Semitism also has some Jewish blood. Well, Boris, you're very original, but you didn't say which country you live in.
In Canada. Canada?
Yeah, I see. When a person says, nah, Ukraine, it means for sure they don't live in Ukraine. Let me explain to you. You have two questions about nationalism, then Zelensky's standards. So you've concluded that in Ukraine, Zelensky embodies the will of the people. How do you know what the people of Ukraine want? Did you personally conduct a survey or see any solid data, polls, or evidence? The fact that there are nationalists in Ukraine, as you call them, that's all fake. It's all organized. Organizations that are sponsored from outside or by partners within Ukraine who work with organizations from abroad, and they push the idea that there is nationalism in Ukraine. Even Putin himself financed nationalist parties in Ukraine to create this picture so that they'd eventually clash, and they did. You are not aware of the facts. Regarding closed borders, Israel did not close its borders. Even Iran did not close its borders. Azerbaijan kept its borders open. Activists in Armenia did not close them for the army. Only Zelensky closed the borders. Today, Zelensky's officials admit that we closed these borders because we didn't think the war would last for 5 years. We expected it to end in a week. Do you understand? This must be considered. It violates constitutional rights. Watch the video to see how mobilization occurs in Ukraine and the methods used. And why are you against Zelensky? Why did I end up in political exile? Aren't you curious about that?
Mhm. What would Denis Elisevich do if he were the president of Ukraine? How would you stop the war if you could?
Well, what's the point of this if?
Yeah, I think so too. Denis, you've been saying for a year that the situation for Ukraine will only get worse. But lately, it's been the opposite. Of course, it's not worth the lives lost. But still, are you ready to admit that you were wrong about this? I don't understand what we were wrong about.
I haven't been saying this for just a year. I've been saying it since 2022. The situation will only get worse. The person doesn't even live in Ukraine. He listened to CNN, saw Zelensky's press conference today. They showed 3 scary missiles and 2 drones, and he thinks everything is fine. But I look at the maps. Yesterday, Russia made major gains in the Sumy region. People are aware of casualties and public mood. I'll ask again, have you seen the mobilization? And have you seen the mothers whose sons are dying? You're not aware, you're not informed. You need to sign up for what used to be Twitter and see what's happening in Ukraine, or subscribe to my channel on YouTube. You'll see what's happening in Ukraine. But YouTube doesn't allow everything because of censorship. I publish this on Telegram and X, and there are other people who do this as well.
Why aren't you telling the truth? What do you mean? The United States started all the wars. Somehow everyone forgot who sponsored Maidan, after which the civil war began. And you, Denis, know that I'm right. Here's your comment.
Every time we keep going in circles, coming back to Maidan, it was all done by Soros's non-governmental organizations. At that time, Soros's team was in power, including this Nuland. I cover all of this, but why should we go back to it for the 55th time? So does this now allow Putin to attack Ukraine by military means?
From your point of view, well, first of all, someone wrote here that you are a Trump agent. That's something new. I haven't heard that before. People said that Maidan was the downfall of Ukraine. Do you agree with that statement?
I myself took part in the Maidan protests, and nobody paid me. Just like 99% of the people, only 1% were tied to those Soros-funded NGOs. Large sums were invested and various techniques were used. But I was there for something else. They put people on stage who would represent their interests. This also led to a full-scale war. It was all wrong.
Zelensky, this is a question for you. Back then, when many people consider Zelensky a hero because he didn't leave when everything was just beginning, from your point of view, should he have left back then, or did he do the right thing?
I don't understand why Denis isn't on the air. This is his area of expertise, my namesake. Why didn't Zelensky leave? We're happy to discuss this now.
We can bring Denis back and he can tell us why Zelensky didn't leave.
I just realized that it's the two of us talking right now.
Yes, but Denis will join us a bit later today. But why aren't the United States fulfilling the guarantees given by Clinton in 1994, 1995? Denis Elisevich will never answer that question.
I'll answer that question. Ask any AI or Google it. This person is referring to the Budapest Memorandum.
Look it up.
Read it carefully. You can have AI interpret it like a lawyer. Come back on air and we'll continue, but I want to tell you something else, Alexander. We are talking with you in April of 26, and I have absolutely no interest in discussing Maidan or the Budapest Memorandum. That's all distant past, and I'm not interested in it. I'm interested in today and tomorrow.
Well, yes. Well, and probably today and tomorrow, Denis dear, can't exist without what happened before. I don't know. Thank you. Yes.
We have to learn lessons from mistakes, but to keep going over this on air endlessly won't lead to anything.
Well, when you mentioned Denis Manzer, that Denis said not just once that Zelensky didn't leave, and it's not just Denis who says that, and Denis will come back to us, he'll say what he thinks about this. Because at the beginning of the war, when it all just started, many people, including Denis Manzer and me, and many others, everyone, so to speak, at the beginning of the war supported Ukraine. Well, I'll tell you this emphatically. I know a huge number of people in Israel who said, Ukraine, only Ukraine. Today, many people, not many, but there are people say things differently. The question was for you. What do you think about what Latinina is saying today? I may not ask, but I have the question here. No, go ahead and ask.
Questions. Just supporting Zelensky. You mentioned Zelensky there. Supporting Zelensky and supporting Ukraine are different things. Thank you to everyone who supported and supports Ukraine. But there's no need to support Zelensky. And the fact that he didn't leave doesn't mean anything. I didn't leave then, nor did millions of men. Many went to the front. Portraying him as a hero under guard in a bunker, now these details are surfacing. I wasn't in a bunker on February 24, but he was there protected by special forces. So let's stop these discussions. Ukraine wouldn't have fallen without Zelensky. I think it would have been much better if he had run away. Today, I can tell you this with full responsibility.
Here's the question. Why do you think that today?
Because the man used the war for his personal interests and built a dictatorship in Ukraine. So why did he build it? Because otherwise he can't govern Ukraine in this situation. He already had these tendencies before. It's just that now it gave him free rein.
Thank you. One second. I'll ask Denis. No, I have Israeli citizenship. Yes, I am an Israeli citizen. I don't know what that has to do with Denis Elisevich. Do you have an Israeli passport, Denis? No.
This is our 5th or 6th broadcast about the Israeli passport and related topics. I have a Ukrainian passport.
I see it's probably a bit boring without me. By the way, we have a TV. Denis, hello again.
Hello.
Yes, we have a phone call, so let's probably start with it. No, already? Yes, let's continue with it then. Good morning, Uffelin. Hello, what's your name?
Good morning, this is Boris Rittman. Denis again, thank you for your answer. I have some clarifications. In this war, I am on Ukraine's side. I believe it has the full right to defend itself. I just want to clarify some points related to what I have said. You say that I should say in Ukraine instead of on Ukraine, and that the way I say it clearly shows that I don't live there. This is exactly one of my arguments, that there is an element of nationalism in Ukraine. You have intimidated the entire population with collectivism, making them completely change their vocabulary. Do you understand that this is not normal? People have always said on Ukraine, and one day they are supposed to stand at attention and change their language. That's not right.
Stop, Boris. Wait a minute. Where did I tell you that you have to say it a certain way? I just noted for myself that in Ukraine, people don't say on Ukraine.
Yes, exactly.
You can say it however you want, absolutely. I have a bunch of people from Western Ukraine who say on Ukraine. But most people say on Ukraine.
But I have, Boris, if I may, a small comment. But look, if Ukrainians, let's say, like it or want people to say in Ukraine for some reason, why shouldn't we, non-Ukrainians, do that? I'm just curious.
I have an individualistic approach to any question. I don't think I should do things just because some group decided so. Let it be on Ukraine, let it be in Canada. That doesn't matter to me. What matters is that I feel comfortable. If I've said in the Ukraine my whole life and that's how it settled in my mind, if I switch to V Ukraine, it should happen naturally, linguistically, because language has its own progression. It can't suddenly change in one day just because of a political order. That's not how it works.
Really?
In Ukrainian, I think it's good, excellent.
There's one more thing I want to say. You just used the word must. You said, why must I? Denis Elisevich has said many times that Ukraine often says, you owe us, you owe us, you owe us, and it sounds harsh. Actually, the word must is kind of wrong in any situation. Regarding whether someone must or must not, I still want to ask Denis Elisevich more about this later. Please go ahead with your second question and then we'll continue.
Maybe I don't speak Russian very well. After all, I've lived in Canada for a long time. In Canada, there's the English word must. It's probably a softer word than must. Maybe I'm not expressing myself exactly.
Yeah, well, maybe.
But I would like to say one more thing about the war. It seems to me that at the time when Russia attacked, the mood in Ukraine, again, I don't live there, I watch, I listen, and so on. It was to respond. Whether it was necessary to respond or not. Maybe it was necessary to make some kind of agreement, to make Ukraine a protectorate. If I were Zelensky, as you say, if I were president, I'm not afraid to say what I would do if I were president.
So what? Probably?
I would have signed that protectorate because as president, I had no guarantees that any big country would help me with weapons and protection. There were no commitments to help, neither from America nor from Europe. Could Ukraine have resisted Russia at that moment without such huge losses? I don't think so. Of course, from a moral point of view, Ukraine had every right to defend itself, but could it actually do that? I don't know. I don't think so. Zelensky, as I see it, just went all in, started playing chess, and began sacrificing his rook. He couldn't do that. But I wasn't the president, and I wasn't Zelensky at that moment. That's how it seems to me from the outside. But I don't think he should be blamed for being the worst president as his opponents portray him. Basically, he would have done the same thing that any other president of a country under attack would have done.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, look at what we have here. A person calls and accuses me of being an anti-Semite, even though I have Jewish blood, so he doesn't know me. Thank you. Second, he tries to say that I support nationalists, even though I call Bandera a fascist. And I say that it's disgusting when Bandera is made into a hero in Ukraine. I speak out against this nationalism that borders on fascism. He doesn't know that, but he throws it at me. Third, he claims Ukraine had to defend itself. At this point, I just want to swear. What am I saying? Was Ukraine supposed to surrender to Putin? Is that what the question was? This person made something up in his head. I tell him that Zelensky is a dictator who cracks down on political opponents, and he says that anyone would do the same. Yet Netanyahu doesn't behave that way. Other presidents didn't act that way during wartime, except Putin. Yeah, Kim Jong-un would probably do that too. Xi Jinping, Putin, Lukashenko, and that's all. The person lives in Canada and knows nothing about the situation. Instead of listening to others, he's aggressively pushing his opinion on everyone, insisting his way is right just because he feels that way. I think you don't know a damn thing about Ukraine, Boris, unfortunately. Not a damn thing at all, absolutely nothing. All right, enough about me already, fine. And you don't know anything about Zelensky either. He's a corrupt official, a dictator under whom I think 1 million Ukrainians have died.
Tell me, please, when they said Ukraine would be taken in 3 days. Yes, well, people are writing here about that rhetoric, but it didn't happen. What do you think helped Ukraine not to fall under Russia in those 3 days, as people say here? Still, yes, there were terrible losses, but nevertheless...
Terrible losses as of today. For me, every life is important, but in the first 3 months, aside from what was happening to civilians, of course, in Mariupol, I'm talking about military losses. They were enormous, but it's not like what's happening today. And this is entirely thanks to the people of Ukraine. First in the army at the front, second in the rear. It was the people of Ukraine who stood firm in the war, not Zelensky. The people of Ukraine, the army. There's no need to make Zelensky out to be Napoleon.
Israel prohibits people liable for military service from leaving during wartime. I don't know for sure, but I guess they'll make a list. Why Ukraine reservists?
Reservists. Israel prohibits reservists from leaving, and Ukraine has closed its border. And do you know how it goes in Ukraine? It's called the VLK, the Medical Commission.
What is that?
People with tuberculosis are sent to the front. With tuberculosis, with mental illnesses. I'm serious. There was a case where a physically disabled person, not just one, was sent to the front. For example, missing an arm or fingers, almost with cerebral palsy. I'm not making all this up. It's all even on the internet. These people speak out, their relatives speak out. You see, that's the difference. You need to listen to one, another, a third, study everything, and then draw a conclusion.
You know, Denis, both in today's broadcast and in the previous one, you used a very good phrase. To be honest, I probably can't recall it exactly right now. I think it was something like the big Soviet relic attacked the small one. Yes.
Yes, Denis said that. It's really classic.
How accurate and precise, because that's what you're saying now. About the fact that, let's say, people in this condition are being sent to war. The exact same thing is happening in Russia, and we see it too. People on crutches, they have just barely recovered. They're on crutches going to the front line on their own. That is, they're walking there themselves. So, well, that's how similar everything is. And here, I guess it's really hard to disagree with you that maybe, quite possibly, it's possible that the president of Ukraine is somehow copying Putin, because the war really started with Zelensky not leaving, staying. That couldn't help but earn respect. Personally, I couldn't help but respect the fact that he was constantly going somewhere, constantly asking for something. Everyone laughed at him. And I just thought, I wonder how Zelensky himself feels. It's not very pleasant for them. There, guys, give us this, give us that, give us this thing. Well, somehow, this is, once again, I say, this is my personal opinion. He managed to ignore it and kept going despite the noise. But the Mindishkeit case, of course, changed a lot inside me. Because indeed, my attitude changed as well. Because indeed, to admit that the president of Ukraine couldn't have been unaware of this means that either he's a bad president or he knew about it. There's no third option, so either way, that's how it is. But Denis, actually, I wanted to ask you about something a bit different. So again, let's not go back to the elections in Hungary and in the upcoming elections in Bulgaria, by the way, which will also take place. Many people note that today, in general, the political world is undergoing a so-called shift to the right. Do you agree with this or not? Are right-wing candidates or right-wing populists, as they are called, winning? By the way, the current Prime Minister of Hungary is also considered one of them, as well as the one who is most likely to win in Bulgaria today. So do you conduct any kind of analysis? That today, for example, liberal views have really faded away, and something else is coming to the forefront again. Right-wing views are coming to the forefront, and we can already see all of this today.
Well, I'll put it this way. Orban lost. It was a defeat for the right, not in the war, but in a specific battle. Right-wing populists, that term was invented by scoundrels because populists are actually leftists who say one thing and then it always ends in collapse. Third, being a classical liberal is great, but today the world is such that for some reason leftists started being called liberals. This really bothers me a lot because real liberalism is great. Real liberals, I have no complaints about them. But these are leftist riffraff. Yes, globally the right is now starting to regain their standing, their positions. But to really judge this, we need to wait for the elections in France. France and Germany are the main countries in the European Union, and much can change from there.
I was just about to ask you maybe a bit later about exactly this difference between leftists and liberals that you're talking about now, but we have a phone call, so let's try again. I don't think so. Good morning, Ufilin. Hello, what's your name? Hello.
Leftists.
Good morning.
Victor?
Good morning, Victor, please.
Well, actually...
So, we're listening to you very carefully. Your radio is on, so there's already a delay on your end. We're listening to you.
I wanted to ask Denis something.
Go ahead.
Let's listen.
Are you listening to me or are you just listening to the radio in your background?
Turn off the radio, Victor.
Because there's a big delay for you. We're sitting here listening to you very carefully and...
Yes. I understand. Please.
Let's do it.
I have a question for Denis. So doesn't it seem to him, because personally it seems to me, that Zelensky is just a puppet? And with his stupidity, his foolishness, he always loved attention. He's doing everything to prolong this war, because every day of the war brings millions in profits to those who stand behind him. And they're setting him up. They'll pin everything on him. But they need the war to go on and on and on. And he's just, well, as they say, dragging things out. He doesn't understand anything at all. The fact that he sniffs doesn't even matter. He's just been a complete idiot his whole life. That's all. That's my opinion. What's your opinion?
Well, thank you.
I want to say right away, I absolutely do not support the methods Zelensky uses. I won't call him a drug addict. I don't play those games. As for everything else, he's not a pawn in the pure sense, but he really is under certain structures that I talked about today. But he is prolonging the war for two reasons. First, for enrichment, and second, because ending the war would mean losing power and possibly going to prison or facing international prosecution. He understands this perfectly well. He knows exactly how many enemies he has. I'm not referring to Putin, the FSB, or the global hunt for him. That's not my point. I'm talking about those people he treated very badly in Ukraine. Especially in Ukraine, but they're worldwide. There are thousands of them. And legal matters. He'll face thousands of lawsuits right after this, and complaints. And of course, he understands all of this, and now he simply can't give up power. By the way, Denis, this is for you. You said he somehow overcame himself there. It's hard for him. Well, as we can see, it's not so bad for him to be in power for 7 years. It's fine. Even though the Constitution says 5. If it was really bad for him, he would have either resigned or held elections.
Well, it's quite possible, yes. I'll say it again. Those were just my impressions at the time. It seemed to me that, in general, all of this was pretty hard on him, of course. I'll say it again. It's quite possible I was wrong, especially after the Mindich case. Boris is back with us again, so let's listen. Good morning, Philip. Hello, what's your name?
Good morning once again. Dennis, it's me again, Boris Reitman.
Denis?
Greetings to all listeners of Radio Vera. I wanted to respond to some of the comments you made about me. I live in Canada, and I don't think I should have the same knowledge about the situation as someone living in Ukraine, for one simple reason. You are now on the air on a Vancouver radio station, and the people calling you are those living in Canada. They might not know the situation.
Yes, but Denis no longer lives in Ukraine. Yes, Denis doesn't live in Ukraine now. Yes.
But we left a long time ago. I left a very long time ago. I left Lviv when I was 10 years old. And I don't know what was happening there in 2022 or even in 2014. You said that Ukraine had to respond, had to fight. You said that. But at the same time, you think that the way Ukraine is doing it under the leadership of Zelensky is not right. How would you do it? What suggestions do you have? I'll say right away, I'm for open borders. I'm not in favor of closing borders at all, ever, and I'm for a volunteer army. But I want to clarify that this standard exists in all countries of the world today. And it seems to me that having a complaint against Zelensky, saying that he's a dictator because he closed the borders, is unfair.
Thank you. Thank you, Boris.
Look, if Boris had called and asked, Denis, this is what I think, this is the information I have from all the sources, that this is how it is, tell me how it really is, I would have gladly told Boris. Boris calls for the third time, and for the third time he insists. For the third time, Boris, the SBU, the Security Service of Ukraine, has opened a criminal case against my mother because of my activities. They tried to imprison him, and the trial continues to this day. At the very least, look into this. He put members of the Ukrainian parliament in pretrial detention. He put Kolomoisky in pretrial detention. He expelled many people from Ukraine. Please look into this. He silenced all the media. Television is turned off in Ukraine. Look into it. Ask, call, I'll explain it to you, I'll tell you. That's why I come on the air. You should have answered about that, but you answered poorly. Once again, you made something up and are trying to pin it on me. Since Putin went to war, of course, we had to respond. We're talking about the fact that the war could have been prevented. And definitely, if it happened, it needed to be ended as quickly as possible, just like Georgia did once when Russia attacked it. Reasonable conditions to end the war were available in Istanbul and could have been improved. I know this for sure. Zelensky left the negotiations. Boris Johnson came, told him, we'll give you money and weapons, just keep fighting. Ukraine is now dealing with this in the war's 5th year. That's what we're talking about. I never said we should surrender to Putin. I was in the city of Kyiv myself at the start of the war with a weapon. I didn't run away. I didn't go anywhere. We're speaking in 2026. I've been saying this specifically since 2023, since the start of the war. We need to end this. It's clear where this will lead.
Please tell me.
One more call.
All right, let's do it.
But not from Boris.
Let's take the call, then I won't even be able to ask anything else. Yes, I'm listening.
Morning, Ufilin. Hi, what's your name?
Good morning. My name is Irina,
Go ahead.
and I have a question for Denis. Tell me, please, do you have, for example, your own vision, your own model of the future of this? So, for example, if a truce is declared, if a surrender is announced, what is your point of view on such situations? Thank you.
Thank you, Irina.
Irina, surrender isn't even being considered. The terms victory and surrender should be dropped by everyone who wants to understand what's happening in Ukraine, or those who already understand don't use it. Neither victory nor surrender is possible. Surrender is not up for discussion. Ukraine will never surrender. And nothing suggests otherwise. It's simply a matter of a very bad end to the war or an apocalypse. That's the choice at hand. Today it's possible to end the war very badly. In a year or two it will be an apocalypse. And not because the front will be struggling or will lose more land. No one in Ukraine will be able to live. Besides, how many more people will die? No one in Ukraine will be able to live. Now, regarding a ceasefire. I am categorically against a ceasefire. I am in favor of reaching a full peace agreement. A full peace. First a framework agreement, then a full one. And that's how it should be. A ceasefire will fall apart in 15 minutes or in 15 days, but it will definitely fall apart. And all of this, and Trump understands this perfectly. Everyone understands this perfectly well. Whether it's Zelensky's fault, Putin's, or a drunken soldier, it doesn't matter to me. Or if a third party like Chinese intelligence intervenes, it doesn't matter. It will fall apart, and we need to end the war as soon as possible.
Denis, I have a question for you. Trump said he could end the Russia-Ukraine war. That didn't happen. Trump promised a lot of things in the Middle East. Although I don't agree with what the person is writing, I'm saying that in reality, he can't do anything. He's practically a complete idiot. And you and Alexandra, and people like you and Alexandra, meaning me, you see things in this person that just aren't there. So why don't you, Alexandra, ask Elisevich what he really thinks about the American president?
Actually, I respect the American president. A very, very long time ago, long before any of this happened, long before his first term, everything he's doing now, almost everything he's doing is right. Why isn't everything happening as quickly as he said it would? Because the world is just that complicated. Why does Trump make such impressive and shocking statements? That's his style. Today he makes one shocking statement, and tomorrow he makes another shocking statement that completely contradicts it. This is so his opponents sit and wonder what he really has in mind. Unintelligent people think he's crazy, or that he has dementia, and that nothing works out, that he lost. No, but people want things to be like in the movies. Very fast and simple. But unfortunately, things like this don't work that way. Sometimes it happens, but most often it doesn't. With Maduro, it worked out very quickly. The Russia-Ukraine war is a very complicated situation. In Iran, it's also a very complicated situation. Thank you.
Denis, still, I would like to return to the question. I'm just really curious. What do you see as the difference between leftists and liberals? Why? I'm asking because you just said that those who call, let's say, the right-wingers populists, those are scoundrels. Because these same people actually, they, so to speak, relatively speaking, populists are basically populists, Trumpists. Yes, that is today, as they say, not my opinion. I want to stress again that today Trumpism is this kind of movement that can be called right-wing populism in some respects. So after all, what is the difference? What distinguishes leftists from liberals?
I'll keep it brief instead of giving a full lecture. So, a leftist wants the state to control people's lives. Assets, the economy, the state should dominate everywhere. And most importantly, redistribute, of course, in a way that seems fair to someone. A liberal differs from a libertarian, that is, from me, basically, in only one major way. A liberal believes that the state must necessarily be present, regulate, and control. But a libertarian, at least a minarchist, because libertarianism is also divided into anarcho-capitalism and minarchism. I'm a minarchist. For me, that's a compromise. That is, I wouldn't want it, but I'm a realist. I understand that the state will be present. After all, there won't be a state. Anarcho-capitalists believe that the state should be abolished completely. Even if I wanted that, I understand it's impossible. That's all. That's according to the classic definitions. That's why they call the right-wingers populists. But what exactly is populist about that? The right supports capitalism, the right acts pragmatically. On the contrary, I think they're just telling some fairy tales about justice. They take and steal from them, redistribute, and the number of poor and destitute people keeps growing. Leftist ideas have failed in world history everywhere they've been applied. Absolutely everywhere.
I agree.
Thank you, Denis.
Спасибо, Денис.
Briefly, once again, with your permission, back to the topic of Volodymyr Zelensky. Actually, by the way, we've talked about this more than once on our broadcasts, recalling, so to speak, the Berezovsky-Putin pair, saying that Putin was Berezovsky's protege and Kolomoisky Zelensky. Yesterday, we had Yulia Molodinina on our broadcast. It's not like we were discussing this topic, no, but she just recalls that when Zelensky came to power, became president, the first thing he talked about was peace. But as she said, he very quickly buckled to the nationalists. So, in your opinion, at what point did Kolomoisky actually lose control over Zelensky? If indeed, let's say, Zelensky, and you agree with this, was, so to speak, under the patronage, let's call it that, of Kolomoisky, then who do you think he switched to?
I'll answer your question and explain how this technically happens. If someone sends a message to Zelensky, that's how it was. Let's not talk about now, but how it used to be. He sends Zelensky a text message. This law needs lobbying. That one needs passing. Meet with this person, not that one. Or he called him, read it, but that's not how it works. But they work together on Kvartal 95 and 95th Kvartal isn't just comedy, it's pure politics, pure political technology. The TV series Servant of the People is pure political technology. Yes, Kolomoisky was involved in the scripts of Kvartal 95. They targeted his personal opponents there, business opponents, political opponents. Kolomoisky did everything to make sure Zelensky came to power. And then Zelensky felt this power. That was the first symptom, because now this has already resurfaced in how he treats the people. He felt the power. Then various international factors got involved, including globalists, for whom Kolomoisky is like a thorn in the side. And he was given a choice. Either we deal with him somehow now, or we deal with you. Again, I'm exaggerating to make it simpler. And Zelensky had to make a choice. He made that choice. He acted like Putin did with Berezovsky.
And at what moment did this happen, in your opinion?
I'm not ready to tell you the year when... No, I understand.
Yes, I understand.
But look, at first, those nationalists that Boris talked about, who are actually under the control of the globalists. Well, now maybe I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. Thank you. You can find the video on the internet. We have an activist named Sergei Sternenko. They attacked Zelensky so hard that Zelensky ran away from the presidential administration. He left. The president's security said, "It's physically unsafe for you to be here." They spray painted the entire presidential administration building. They lit torches there, shouted, and even threatened direct physical violence, saying, we'll drag you out of there. Today he's hugging and kissing them. Why? Because today they're on the same side of the barricades. He doesn't need to end the war, and they don't need to end the war either. They control part of the Ukrainian intelligence services, the most powerful part. They control all the media. Imagine the amount of power and strength that is.
I have two questions, Denis. I've never heard anything like this before. Why did you say, actually not why you said it, but why it is so? I absolutely trust what you're saying. Why is Zelensky a thorn in the side of the globalists? And that's the first question. And the second, why did you say that Kvartal 95 is not about humor, it's about politics? Many people saw it purely as humor, Denis.
It wasn't you who called Zelensky a thorn in the side. Kolomoisky is the one troubling the globalists.
Pardon me, sorry, Kolomoisky, of course.
Kolomoisky is a thorn in the side of the globalists because he controlled the largest media outlets, which was a big obstacle and went against their agenda. He interfered with their plans. But at the same time, I have to say, Kolomoisky wasn't promoting any good ideas. He was just stubbornly defending his business and his own view of life. I don't agree with his outlook on life, at least as he used to declare it. With a lot of things, with most of them. But with some things, I actually agree. For example, I agree with him about the economy. Besides, the oligarchs are slowing down the entry of Western corporations into Ukraine because basically they need to be removed and their place taken by Western corporations. Kolomoisky resisted this as much as he could. That's why earlier, Poroshenko was used by the globalists when Kolomoisky had private bank taken away from him without any legal grounds. You know about this, they basically nationalized it. All of this was done with complete lawlessness, and of course all of it was illegal. Now, Kvartal 95. Many think LGBT is about sex, but it's really about politics. The same goes for Kvartal 95. Every week it's attacks on one politician or two or three, and then the next week again. The intensity could go up or down depending on that politician's further behavior. There was absolutely no everyday human humor there. Everything was built around politics. And they became popular because of this. And sometimes it wasn't just pushing the limits, it was crossing the line. And I emphasize, no one ever targeted Zelensky. Yes, he was under Kolomoisky's protection. Let's say they were afraid of Kolomoisky. But in the Kvartal 95, there are actors, smaller ones, Rybki, other managers. No one ever targeted anyone. But Zelensky targeted me. Do you understand what the issue is? People like me. How is that even fair? I mean, when you were on stage criticizing all the politicians, it was fine for you, but I can't go on air and offer some constructive criticism. I'm not saying anything anti-Ukrainian. I'm saying things against Zelensky, and I'm expressing my views on how Ukraine should develop or how things are being done. That's actually part of democracy. I can really dislike Zelensky, and I do dislike him. That's absolutely normal. I don't have to be liked by anyone. That's what I want to say. That's why people underestimate it. Servant of the people was the preparation, the start of Zelensky's political campaign. And I want to say it again. I don't know if I said this on your show or not. Zelensky submitted documents to run for president of Ukraine in 2014. Back then, when Poroshenko won, he withdrew them urgently because he was told, why are you getting involved? Look, the annexation of Crimea, Donbas, do you need this? And he thinks, I went there. I'm going there for applause. Why do you think he ran in 2019? He thought he would make a deal with Putin. He thought he would do it now. People would applaud him. You're great. But things didn't go as planned, partly because of his own behavior.
Did he really think he could make a deal with Putin, Denis?
Yes, he thought he could make a deal with Putin in the primitive way he had planned. And then reality intervened. Merkel, Macron, Soros. They got in his ear and said, you need to do it like this, and like this, and like this, like this, and like this. He sat down and thought, how do I maneuver between these people? How do I get out of this? And he started flirting with these tame nationalists. He changed his rhetoric. And today, Zelensky, who is Jewish, congratulates people on Vyshyvanka Day and also wishes the Orthodox a happy Easter. Well, you understand, this is... a president should congratulate people of all faiths. But pretending to be someone you're not, to me, that's immoral, disgusting, and just plain gross.
That's interesting, what you just said. You should congratulate everyone. Of course. By the way, Netanyahu even congratulated people on the holiday of Ramadan. By the way, when I see Muslims in Israel, I congratulate them too. That's probably the right thing to do. And by the way, when you mentioned the Vyshyvanka and Easter, I didn't think about that. Really, I don't remember Zelensky congratulating people on Passover. Even Putin does that, I think, well, with Passover. I'm not sure about that, but I think so. It's strange. Yeah, really unclear. I found something here. You know, we had someone on the radio, Arkady Dubnov. Yeah, he's an opposition figure, and somehow he got offended at me because he thought we weren't leftist enough there. We're not leftist at all. And now I'll read you a short comment from yesterday. There's a Jew and an Israeli sitting in a box on the screen. He lives in Israel now, Arkady Dubnov. Today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. And while criticizing Trump, he mumbles something about human values, about human rights, that he personally, as a Soviet young pioneer, was raised on. That's why he has, in quotes, a distaste for Trump. What's this Uncle Oshua doing here, proving the complete absence of what he supposedly was raised on? Which human rights? Whose human rights did President Trump violate? The bandit murderers from Hamas, Iran's executioners? Or is this just another leftist rot, the propagandists of Soros's gang? You talk about this all the time. I'm sure that a lot of people don't hear you. It's not just you they don't hear anyone. In fact, you are heard more than anyone else. But when you said that Kvartal 95 was not about politics, but about humor, then tell me, why were they so incredibly popular? Is it because people need politics, or why, Denis?
No. And you know, that's a very good question. It's a key question. They were popular. And when you actually watch the moment from the show, there's a really dumb political joke from the stage where basically Zelensky actually called Ukraine a prostitute. He called Ukraine a prostitute, our country, well, my country. And yours too, since you're from Crimea. He called it a prostitute. Many things like that happened, and people just sat there laughing, thinking it was hilarious.
But why?
I'll tell you now. I despise those who paid to see the Kvartal 95 and laughed at it. I always said, who are you laughing at? You're laughing at yourselves. So basically, their noses are being rubbed in it, and they laugh at it. And if I even ended up there by accident, I would leave and think I was just sitting there laughing at myself. We're doing something wrong, they go and vote for idiots. Well, back then, Zelensky mocks those idiots they elected. Then they go and elect other idiots. Zelensky mocks them again, and they keep laughing. But today, thank God, the halls of Kvartal 95 are already half empty. I've been told they bring in soldiers and others. They hand out tickets just to create some atmosphere, some appearance. And that's the key thing. People need to think about this. Now you've mentioned Soros again. I talk about this often because it's the root cause. And I didn't understand this root cause until I got into the media. And when I encountered this personally in the media, when I was fighting against this huge machine. Once again, thanks to Durov, he openly joined in. Musk is number one in this globally. And in Ukraine, I am Soros's number one enemy. And the gangs, I came forward with reform proposals. One of the reforms was about the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. I said it needs to be disbanded. And the budget should be used, paid out directly to people. People will buy health insurance themselves. Well, that's it in short, without going into details. An article about me immediately came out in an organization that is funded by Soros, openly. If you look at their partners, there are Soros foundations, USAID, and so on. They wrote, Elisevich is pro-Russian and proposes terrible illegal things. Why? Because they make money there. That was 2 years ago. Now I'll tell you an example from last week. So there's a Ukrainian website for posting job vacancies and job searching. And then a job posting appears. The salary is $34,000. $2,540 to be exact. They're recruiting young people to Hungary, from Ukraine to Hungary before the elections. The requirements are to be athletic, to have a good command of the Hungarian language, and to be ready to work 24/7. And to be mentally resilient. Who could they have been recruiting like that? In Ukraine, we call this a tetushka. It's basically a street thug who is told to do something and does it for money.
Are you being serious right now? Yes, I am.
I talked about this on my stream. I gave links to that website. Who posted that ad? You can't just post it there. This is an NGO, a non-governmental organization. We checked the registry to see who the head of this organization is. There's someone named Yulia Naumenko, I think. And who was the head before her? Andriy Yermak. And then we see in Hungary on election day a huge rally. Look at how many supporters of Magyar came out and how many Ukrainians were brought there. And just as I do this broadcast, the next day a new organization appears. The same text about me is spread across Telegram channels and websites. That there's this Elisevich who calls himself they write in quotes, Russian-speaking blogger from Kyiv. They always, don't emphasize that I'm someone from the business world. It's important for them to show that I'm probably working for someone, that I'm spreading someone else's ideas. They accuse me of being pro-Russian and claim everything is fake. They didn't write about it. Why did you recruit people for such expensive trips to Hungary? Write about that. Maybe you took them to a zoo or something else. They don't mention it because everyone gets it. Let me explain how it works. When one Elisevich is up against billions of dollars and officials.
And you just said that there are half-empty halls at Kvartal 95. That's what was written here. Half-empty halls because Zelensky isn't there. Well, that's probably for those who like Zelensky as an actor. I'm not talking about him as a president. Well, I don't know. What do you know about Zelensky's wife? And what does Denis Elisevich think of her?
I don't discuss family. I'm not them. You see what I mean? There has to be some morality, like calling him a drug addict, insulting his wife. I have my own opinion, but I won't do it on air simply because I won't. I'm constantly doing this.
Did you get a chance to watch? Actually, I don't know if you were interested in watching the big interview of Pavel Gubarev with Dude.
I haven't been able to start watching it for a week now. I watched Kapustin, but I haven't even started Gubarev yet. I'll definitely do it because I just need to.
Yes, I actually really wanted to ask you if you discovered anything new from what you watched in Gubarev's interview. Well, of course, I won't spoil anything.
I would like to, Denis, ask Denis Elisevich about Dud's interview with Kapustin. Denis, what's your point of view on this strange, in my opinion, interview? Well, maybe not.
In Ukraine, it was met with intense aggression. Dud was declared a KGB agent, and you know what the vilest part is? They all wrote posts with instructions. Complain about Yuri Dud's channel on YouTube so that his channel gets shut down, so that this video gets deleted. So that's the essence of it. So you don't want to listen to another point of view? Besides, it's not even about another point of view. They didn't like how Dud was conducting the interview. Do you understand? And if they dislike it even more, basically, they could even kill. That's their thinking. Maybe he should go to prison. And at the same time, they shout that Ukraine is fighting for freedom. This is pure Putinism. They're against Putin, but they're exactly like Putin themselves. I listened to this Kapustin. I kept listening to him. I think, where are the ideas that are different from Putin? Where is something else? All I heard was about violence, about pressure, about aggression, about hatred. Well, that's all about Putin. I didn't hear anything new. It won't be Putin, but Kapustin. That's how it is.
Laughter. You just mentioned those who were being gathered to go to Hungary. Young athletic guys. Those who know Hungarian. Basically, people like Kapustin and the same group who once went to the European Football Championship in France. And there they could easily be called the same kind of thugs.
Basically, yes. Well, I'll just leave out those fascist ideas and the praise of Hitler altogether. Yes, Grandpa is Jewish. That's just unbelievable to me. But look, here's what I noticed. What did Putin base all his propaganda against Ukraine on? That there are neo-Nazis there. They need to be eliminated, denazify them. Then our special services involve the Russian Volunteer Corps, who are banned from entering Europe because they are fascists. So you end up justifying it for Putin. And now Putin comes out and says, look, even our Russian fascists went to fight for Ukraine. Why? Because it's a fascist state. That's just stupidity. But do I think there are idiots sitting there? No, they need to stir things up. They're doing it on purpose. They need to fuel all of this so that it keeps burning longer. And about Kapustin himself, let's admit it, he's not a fool. Because in Ukraine, our so-called fascists are just nobodies, whoever they are. Well, those who call themselves that. This guy's not a fool. Not a fool. And that makes him even more dangerous. But these ideas, this power, it's some kind of nightmare. You see, I'm ideologically against Zelensky. I have a reform program. I have different views. But the person spoke and said nothing different from Putin, which shocked me. In the long interview, I kept waiting to hear something new, but I never did.
Be sure to watch Gubarev. I really want to discuss this with you. I don't think you'll find anything fundamentally new there. But there is something curious there, yes.
Strange people. We've already explained this to you 20 times and now you're writing again. First of all, you're reproaching Denis Elisevich for banning people he doesn't like on his channel. But it's his channel. You said it yourself, he can do whatever he wants. Strange. Elisevich needs to have a debate with Cymbilyuk or Honczarenko. Oh, by the way, Alexandra said that both of them refused to debate Elisevich. Why does Denis think that is?
Because they had nothing to say. By the way, Honczarenko was acting crazy, celebrating. He went to Hungary and cheered Magyar's victory. Do you know what he shouted? He was so happy, calling it a victory. You see, he says, this is our victory. Who is we? Where did you win? That's the kind of great opposition figure Honczarenko is. This is for people who believe in some kind of opposition in Ukraine.
By the way, Denis, the only thing I heard, can you confirm if it's true? About the 90 million, that's clear, right? But they say that the new Hungarian Prime Minister won't create obstacles because I think there are about 10 million euros of frozen Hungarian money. So it's a kind of compromise. Either Hungary gives the green light for 90 million to Ukraine, then it gets its own 10 million subsidies. Or accordingly, neither side gets anything.
Yes, but it's not just that. I think it's even 17 billion.
Billions, I apologize.
Yes, but they set 27 conditions for Hungary that it must fulfill. And one of these conditions is changing its migration policy. From the start. That's all you need to know.
And about Hungary, by the way, you had a debate about it. I'll be honest, I only found out about it today, and I was really surprised. It turns out that Hungary is, relatively speaking, the third poorest country in Europe. It only ranks behind Bulgaria, which I think is in last place, and I think one of the Baltic countries, either Lithuania or Latvia. Hungary is about third from the bottom. It was rather surprising.
I'm going to shock you again now. I'm going to shock you again. Hungary's GDP is $230 billion, while Ukraine's GDP is 140. Hungary's GDP per capita is $16,000, while in Ukraine it's $5,000. That means Hungary is 4 times richer than Ukraine.
But I'm more than sure that when all this is over, Ukraine will flourish and earn much more.
It depends on who will be president.
How?
I'm giving you this data, including pre-war information. Of course, pre-war,
Boris is on the line with us. What are we going to do? Let's bring Boris on.
I don't know how Denis Elisevich will say it. No.
your show is finally...
By the way, they wrote, finally, Denis Elisevich is on your show. I always watch him, but on your show, he's especially great. Guys, please invite him more often. It's not about us, it's about Denis Elisevich. The main thing is that he has the time and desire to come to us. Please, let's...
Yes, Boris on the air.
Hello, we don't have much time, Boris.
If you could be a bit more brief.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify and maybe apologize if I offended you. I wasn't accusing you of anti-Semitism. Honestly, I don't know enough about you to make any such statements at all. But the word Vera, Radio Vera, in the word Vera, it's an abbreviation that includes the word Jew. It's connected to the Jewish theme. And the Jewish theme is a very important topic on this channel, as far as I understand. I believe that Zelensky should not have become the president of Ukraine at all for one simple reason. If something goes wrong, they go after the Jews. This is nothing new. It has happened many times throughout history. And I see a trend that when this started, oh, Zelensky, yes, we love you. Yes, you represent our interests. Now the trend is Zelensky is bad. It's not just you saying this. Many people are saying it. And it makes me stop and think, why is this happening? Why did everyone praise him back then, but not now? And I think there's a very serious danger here because this will backfire on the Jews once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Boris. By the way, Dmitry Shcheglik talked about this even before that, or rather right when Zelensky had just started running for president of Ukraine.
Look,
That's a fact, but I absolutely disagree with it. And if Zelensky had turned Ukraine into an economic miracle, then everyone would be saying, what a great guy. The issue isn't about Jews. It's that Zelensky is a scoundrel who shouldn't have taken the position. I absolutely agree with you. Why? Because the job is too big for him, and he lacks the competence for it. He went after applause, not to make Ukraine great. That's a big difference. There's a terrible president of Mexico, a Jewish woman, actually the first in history to become president. So what? So what? Mexico's president is Jewish and a woman. She cooperates with the cartels. She does unbelievable things. Unbelievable things are happening inside the country. People will also say Jews are bad. No, that's just how she is. That's specifically how she is. Ukraine had non-Jewish presidents before that, and each was worse than the previous one.
by the way, the president of Argentina, Milei, right? I think that's his name.
Yes.
So he received an award from Netanyahu, right? I don't know. This order has some special name. I think Emili isn't Jewish, but he pursues such a policy very much. No.
He currently holds, what's it called? I apologize. What's it called? Conversion to Judaism.
Conversion to Judaism. I think.
He is working on that right now.
Oh, well, that's not really common anymore, by the way. Well, those are also Jews, but I don't know how you can go from one to another, but still. I have a question for you, Denis. I'll ask the last question. We've already gone over time. Tell me, please, could it be that Zelensky, a servant of two masters, is destroying Ukrainians for the genocide of Jews on the territory of Ukraine? I didn't really understand if you did. Well...
Yes, well, that's nonsense.
Sorry, Elisevich, I heard that in 1922, when the invasion began, in case of an unfavorable outcome, Hungary put its army on alert to annex territories that it considers historically its own.
Absolute nonsense. Hungary is a member of NATO and the European Union, and a NATO country would never in its life carry out armed aggression against anyone because it would put the entire alliance at risk. Impossible. And for Hungary, to let go of poor Zakarpattia would mean being expelled from NATO and the EU and coming under sanctions. Tell me, what would Uzhhorod and Zakarpattia give them? Practically speaking, if you end up being blacklisted by the international community, Well, I mean, these are people who just sit around, brainwashed, making up problems where there aren't any, instead of focusing on the real issues.
By the way, starting from June 2nd, Denis, the director, or whatever it's called, the president of Mossad will be a Russian Jew. His name is Roman Goffman. Doesn't this mean, for people who understand politics like you, this is a question for you, that Russian Jews are running the show in Israel today?
Well, you surprised me just now because as far as I know, there isn't a single judge in Israel who immigrated from the former Soviet Union. That's considered unacceptable there. I don't know his history or biography, but if he's a repatriate will become the head of Mossad.
In Belarus, Denis.
I was shocked then.
I'm shocked. I want to say thank you so much for today. When people said we don't invite you, we even invite you to teach us. And I want to remember once again, together with you, Hennedy Balashov, who has been gone for 1.5 years now, and to thank the late Hennedy, unfortunately, for the fact that we met and for the opportunity we have today. We invite you, and whenever you have time, come, Denis.
Let me correct that a little.
Sash, not 1.5 years, but less, 5 months. He, unfortunately, in November...
Passed away in November?
In November, but it had already been 1 year.
No, well, what month is it now?
Thank God.
April.
Can you believe it, Denis? It feels like he's been gone so long.
Yeah.
So, Denis, please come. We'll be happy to see you. About what I asked you, how realistic is it? And people are saying invite you and Svetov, since Svetov is saying something completely different today than he did before. Well, first of all, you and Svetov need to want to do it. And about your communication with Yulia Latinina, again, if you want to, I just wanted to say that you divide people. You are a very contradictory person, Denis Elisevich. Some people really want to debate with you. Others really don't want to, because those who don't want to, you said, have nothing to say. And those who do want to, why is that, Denis?
Well, those who want to, you are naming figures from the Russian Federation after all, even if they are in exile, but they are still figures of the Russian Federation. I don't understand what there is to debate about, since they have their own interests and I have my own interests. I believe everyone should focus on their own countries, and I would gladly debate with a representative of the authorities or with a representative of their propaganda.
Of Ukraine?
Of course. With those who hold a different point of view and are ready to argue it in a civilized way on air, or at least somehow.
And tell me, please, when they wrote, I tune into Elisevich on your show because he's different here, are you really different on your own show and here?
No, it's just completely different when you host a broadcast alone. The dynamics, you plan it yourself, you react to the chat live. I can't see the chat right now. I deliberately don't turn it on so I can do this properly. That's why it may seem that way to people.
Thank you, Denis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck to you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.